Hello everyone and welcome to Database Security Office Hours for November 2018. Our topic this month is Oracle OpenWorld. OpenWorld is held each year, usually in September or October, at Moscone Center in downtown San Francisco. We first started these conferences back in 1986. Back then we called it the International Oracle Users Week. And our conferences really started small. That first year we were only about 500 people. Over the years the conferences grew, and in 1997 we renamed it to Oracle OpenWorld. Today, OpenWorld conferences are usually in the 60,000 attendee range, with customers visiting from around the world. Our online attendance is even larger, with 2.1 million attendees this year. We close an entire city block for the conference, and we typically sell out every hotel in the city, as well as in most of the surrounding communities. In the city of San Francisco alone, they estimated that OpenWorld sold over 107,000 hotel room nights, and that number goes up each year. Today, I'll be giving you an overview of the database security sessions from this year's conference. Just a reminder that this call is being recorded and that recordings for this and past AskTOM sessions are available on the AskTOM website. Just click All Sessions to view previous month's recordings. Office hours are intended to give you a direct line into your database security product development team. We'll start each office hour session with product announcements on what's new since the last AskTOM session. We follow that by a presentation on some technical topic, and then we finish with an open line for any questions you may have, not limited to the topic we cover today. Anything you want to ask about database security. Feel free to enter questions into chat at any time, and I'll get to those during the Q&A segment at the latter part of office hours. Let's start with some of those announcements. It's been a busy couple of months for product development. We have two new bundle patches out the door, one for Audit Vault and Database Firewall. Bundle Patch 9 is now available. Another for Key Vault with Bundle Patch 8 now available. During OpenWorld, we announced that development of Key Vault 18.1 has been proceeding very nicely, and we expect to have that out the door and available for you sometime early next year. We also announced that the latest version of the Database Security Assessment Tool, version 2.03, will be released very soon, probably before the end of the year. Database 18CXE is now available. You may remember we told you that was coming a couple of months ago, and that includes all three database security options: Advanced Security, Database Vault, and Label Security. It also includes most of the other security features, including centrally managed users, which remember we talked about a few months ago, but it does not include enterprise user security. For Bundle Patch 9, Audit Vault and Database Firewall Bundle Patch 9. This new patch adds support for Database 18.3, but the real change that comes in Bundle Patch 9 is we've done an infrastructure upgrade, and this is preparing us for future versions of Audit Vault and Database Firewall. We've updated all internal communications between the different components within Audit Vault and Firewall to use strictly TLS 1.2. Most of the time, bundle patches are cumulative. So if I was on Bundle Patch 3 and I wanted to skip Bundle Patch 4 and 5, I could go directly to Bundle Patch 6, and that wouldn't matter. Bundle Patch 6 would include 3, 4, and 5. Bundle Patch 9 is a new starting point. If you skip Bundle Patch 9 and want to go to Bundle Patch 11 later, you would have to apply Bundle Patch 9, and then you could go to Bundle Patch 11. So Bundle Patch 9 is a new baseline for the 12.2 release of Audit Vault and Database Firewall. There are some prerequisites for applying this bundle patch. The first one is, before you even begin to apply the patch, you're going to need to ensure that all of your Audit Vault agents are using Java 1.8. If you've got agents out there using some of the older versions of Java, 1.6, 1.7, you must upgrade those to Java 1.8. This is again to support the improved cryptographic stack for the TLS 1.2. Then we're going to have you, once you've done that, apply an agent pre-patch. And that agent pre-patch is included in the BP9 download. You don't have to do it separately, but what it does is applies on the Audit Vault server and pushes to the Audit Vault agent, and it gets all of those agents ready for the 1.2 TLS change that comes when you apply the major bundle patch. Once you've got those two things done, then it's pretty much the same as any Audit Vault and Database Firewall bundle patch. You go through, do the pre-patch, make sure you've got enough space for the patch to apply, and then apply the bundle patch. Because there's a couple of extra steps in this bundle patch, Our support has proactively created a note that tracks any issues or adds any elaboration that we find that maybe was not included in the README, and we strongly recommend that you take a look at this note 245737.4.1 before applying the patch, just to make sure you have the latest info on it. That's Audit Vault and Database Firewall. Bundle Patch 8 for Key Vault's a little bit easier. This is just security patches and fixes, no real new functionality, and it's a much easier install. The new version of the Database Security Assessment Tool has some exciting new capabilities. One of the big ones we've been waiting for is we have included a new set of rules in our findings, and these are the Department of Information Security Agency, DISA, Secure Technical Implementation Guide, STIG rules. And so if you run DBSAT and it finds something that applies to the STIGs, it will highlight this as a STIG finding for you. We've also added in some new rules around how the password files are managed, global name settings, instance names, RMAN backups. A lot more new rules are built into the new version of the assessment tool. We've made tracking system grants a little bit easier by highlighting them with an arrow that indicates it was directly granted rather than granted through a role. And you may remember that we've talked over time about the capability of creating sensitive data discovery files in different languages. We've had 6 of those languages where they've had enough use that we're comfortable packaging them with the product that you download. And so when you get the new version of DBSAT, it will have sensitive pattern files in some of the more common European languages. We've added some new sensitive data types for sensitive data discovery, and we've improved our grouping of the findings into different categories and subcategories, and we now group those categories by the level of risk that we associate with the category. And finally, we've made our reports a little bit easier to read. We've had several people give us feedback that they wanted more data in the reports around recommendations for remediation, and so we've done that in this new version of the Database Security Assessment Tool. Just like it's been a busy month for development, it's been a busy month for support, and there are several new support notes that you might want to take a look at. There's a new note on the centrally managed users that talks about configuring CMU in an 18C database. If you're getting ready to embark on this project, you might want to take a look at this note. There's 2 new notes for Audit Vault and Firewall. One of them I already mentioned. That's that note that tracks the any lessons learned around applying this bundle patch 9. But another one is an interesting note on clearing unused kernels from the Audit Vault and Database Firewall, which not only returns some disk space to you, but also means that your startup is going to be a little bit quicker. And finally, you remember from a couple of months ago that over the last few quarterly bundle patch PSUs, release updates, we have finally gotten our cryptographic libraries for TLS up to MES 4.1 or 415. These new notes talk about that and about how to use the 415 crypto libraries to improve the security around your network encryption if you're using TLS. I also want to call your attention to another area in support that you may not have run across, and that's the Oracle Support Live Advisor. Much like AskTOM, our support team, which comes from development by the way, our support team runs monthly webcasts, and there is a series of webcasts for the database. Sometimes these cover security topics. If you take a look at the Live Advisor program in Oracle Support, you can go to previous webcasts and you can see the recorded webcast on all kinds of topics, including things like strong authentication, transparent data encryption, Kerberos, enterprise user security, lots more. If you haven't already looked into this resource, take a look at it. Some of the technical content is really first rate. All right, now let's get to this month's topic and let's talk a little bit about OpenWorld. OpenWorld is an enormous amount of fun for your Oracle team. It's a lot of work. We go from sunup to sundown most nights, and sometimes we don't stop at sundown, but it is a huge conference, a lot of energy, just an incredible experience to be there presenting and working at such a massive group of Oracle people. Whenever we talk about OpenWorld or whenever we're at OpenWorld, we sometimes talk about new products that we're developing and new capabilities that we're adding in. And we always like to remind you that whenever we do that, this is what our general product direction is. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's what ships at the end of the day. These are the things that we're thinking about doing. These are the things that we're planning on doing. But you should never buy anybody's software, including ours, based upon futures. You always want to look at software based upon what it does right now if you're buying. Okay? So as I mentioned, incredibly busy time for us. Just the product manager sessions, my team's sessions, we had multiple sessions scattered throughout the week, and we were joined with some great guest speakers. I was fortunate enough to have NOS Media come from Portugal and talk with me at my session on GDPR. We had Intesa Sanpaolo Bank come and talk with Pedro Lopez, our database security assessment tool product manager, on how to use DBSAT. We had Allianz from Germany come and talk about managing keys for transparent data encryption with Key Vault. And we were really honored to have Symantec, one of the world's largest security companies, join us on stage to talk about why they use Oracle Audit Vault and Database Firewall inside Symantec to detect and block attacks on the Oracle databases, and how they've rolled this out in production, inline blocking. Just fantastic. In addition to the session, we did 4 hands-on labs again this year, and the topic for the hands-on labs was Database Security Assessment Tool. This is a really popular topic. The 4 labs were booked solid. You couldn't get a reservation for them the very first day that we announced them. So we had a waiting list for the labs on day 2. It was a great session. We had a good venue, and everyone really seemed to enjoy the labs. In addition to the labs, we always have demo stations that we set up at OpenWorld, and this year was no different, but we got a great spot this year. So I just had to share this because sometimes you just get really lucky in where your booth gets placed. So you can see this little circle here. This is where we were. We had 4 different booths. We had 2 stand-up booths and 2 Genius Bar booths. But we were not only in kind of a quiet corner where you could actually have a conversation with someone. Oftentimes it's so noisy it's hard to hear people. But we were right next to the theater. That's that big box, box you see underneath the circle. We were right next to the theater where Andy Mendelsohn gave his keynotes, and we had several customer presentations there as well. Just a really great energy, a really great place. I hope we get this lucky again next year. For the presentations themselves, we had a couple of themes, and one of the themes at OpenWorld this year is that when you look at data, data is an asset. It is worth money. It is something, it's not tangible. I mean, you don't see it so much unless it's on the screen, but it is an asset, and as an asset, it has to be protected, and as an asset, you have to be aware that people are going to want to try and steal it. We talked a little bit about regulations, and this is a topic that is probably going to be with us for decades to come. And the pace of regulatory change continues to grow. We see new regulations every year, all governing data privacy and how we're supposed to treat sensitive data. We talked about the fact that people want to steal that valuable data, and we took a little bit of a look into how different people try and get at data and the characteristics of those who are attempting to steal your data. We also talked about something that's a little sobering when you think about it. If you look at the people who are trying to steal data and you contrast them with the people who are trying to defend against that theft, the advantages are on the thieves. They've got all the infrastructure in the world. You know, the cloud has done a lot of wonderful things for us, but one of the things it's done is it has made huge amounts of infrastructure available to just about anyone who can go out and open a public cloud account and get something running. So data thieves don't just have botnets, they have massive servers that they can draw on to stage their attacks from. They also have really high quality tools. Things that nation states used to do, that intelligence agency used to do, a lot of those tools have been released into the public domain over the years, or stolen and compromised over the years. And the hackers now have tools that nation states used to use at their fingertips. Hackers have all the time in the world. For most hackers, stealing is their job. This is what they do day in, day out, 8 hours, 10 hours, 12 hours a day. And there's a lot of these people out there trying to make money off of your data. Now switch over and think of it from the defender's standpoint. In the defender's corner, I've got a limited number of people. I don't have all the infrastructure in the world. I don't have all the tools in the world. And I never have enough time because I can't spend 100% of my time on security. I have to spend time on availability, on performance, on keeping the lights on. So defenders are really at a disadvantage here. And as a software vendor, one of the things that Oracle recognizes is that it's our responsibility to make our tools easier to deploy, easier to use, to try and reduce the defender's load in doing the things they need to do to prevent their data from being stolen. At OpenWorld, we talk a little bit about how hackers attack a database. And we talk about the fact that the bad guys, they usually come after the users first. They'll come after the end users. There'll be phishing attacks. There'll be attempts to plant malware on workstations. But they come after the users. They come after the applications, looking for SQL injection vulnerabilities, looking for ways to get an application to do things that you wouldn't normally want it to see it do. They really like to come after database and system administrators and application administrators, because if I can compromise an administrator account, I've already got a lot of privileges to get into anything that I want to. They'll get on your network, they'll try and sniff traffic to read what's going on to make sure that they're able to just steal data as it goes over the wire completely undetected. They'll look for exploits within the database. They'll look for exploits that allow them to bypass the database and go after the underlying data files, perhaps the operating system for the database host. And never forget, every time you copy a database, you make a test development copy, you have multiplied your risk, because each of those new databases is another place where the attackers can go after. And so this is how the bad guys get at the data. And at OpenWorld, we talk about the fact that if you want to defend, you've got to defend against all of those attacks. And we start off our defense with database security assessment. We want to make sure that we know how we're configured, that we have all the patches, that we're set up for success. Because if we don't start with a good configuration, nothing else is going to matter. We talk about the need to monitor activity, and this is what we're going to do with Audit Vault so that we can capture what's going on and see when something bad is happening. We talk about the need to remove risk from those non-production copies so that the bad guys can't use them to get at our data and completely walk around our production system. We talk a little bit about the need to protect against database bypass attacks by encrypting the data that's on disk using transparent data encryption. And of course, whenever you encrypt data, that means you have encryption keys. And so we talk about the importance of key management. We talk about the need to protect your database against compromised administrator accounts. And this is an area where Database Vault can come into play and can give a lot of value. We talk about the use of privilege analysis to identify when users are overprivileged, when applications are overprivileged, presenting a larger attack surface for the bad guys to use to try and get in. We cover the value of tools like data redaction that reduce the chance that sensitive data is going to proliferate outside of your database. And we talk about the use of tools like Database Firewall to monitor incoming data, to monitor the incoming SQL command stream, and identify areas where things that we don't want to happen or happen, and we can either report on those or even block them from hitting the database. And all of this is what we call the maximum security architecture. A lot of us for many years have worked with the maximum availability architecture. Just like MAA, MSA gives you a blueprint for protecting your databases. No conference in 2018 would have been complete without talking about the cloud, and there were a lot of discussions at OpenWorld about cloud security, including our own Larry Ellison's security keynote, where he announced Generation 2 of our Oracle Cloud Infrastructure. Now, a lot of people think of Oracle Cloud Infrastructure as the bare metal servers, the infrastructure as a service components that are so popular, but there's a lot more to OCI than just the bare metal servers. We have Exadata servers, we have storage, we have VMs available, we have software load balancers that are available. All the things you need to set up an infrastructure in the cloud are within the OCI. And what Gen 2 does that has never been done anywhere else is we've taken a piece that is part of every cloud. We don't talk about it a lot, but any cloud vendor has a cloud control plane. It's how we as the cloud provider do the work we need to do to keep your servers up and running. In most clouds, the cloud control plane runs on the same servers as the customer's services. And what that means is if you get a customer image that gets compromised, that customer image can be used to access the control plane from which you can then move laterally into other customer services. In the Oracle Cloud Infrastructure Generation 2, we have separated out that control plane into a completely different set of servers. There is no control plane on customer servers anymore. No Oracle Cloud code at all. We cannot see your data because we're not on your servers, and your servers cannot compromise our control plane, which means there's no ability for an attacker to try and move laterally within our cloud. Okay. We, of course, talked about autonomous database. This is a huge topic, growing very, very popular as we continue to expand the autonomous database services. And we covered the key messages of the autonomous database being a self-driving database that automates all management, self-securing, protecting itself from external attacks, and self-repairing, protecting you from downtime, including planned maintenance for patching. For the self-securing messaging, we talked a little bit about the value of automated patching and just how expensive patching manually is. We talked about the importance of encryption and how we encrypt by default at rest and in motion within the autonomous database. And we talked about the separation of duties and activity auditing that is configured by default for you in the autonomous database. Despite all that, as much as we do in autonomous database to secure your system, never forget that security is and probably always will be a shared responsibility. And although we do a lot in autonomous database and in any of our cloud services, there are some security responsibilities that fall on you as the customer. And so we talked about what those responsibilities were, and we discussed a new cloud service that we're introducing next year called the Oracle Data Security Cloud Service that will be your single control plane to do your piece of the security puzzle. So assessing your databases, discovering sensitive data, masking that data in copies of your system, test development, managing your users, identifying risky activity by your users, and auditing activity within your database, and more. This is just the start. And we gave you a sneak peek at our demo pods if you came by at that Data Security Cloud Center where we had live demos running where you could go through and do risk assessments and auditing and see how data masking work and sensitive data discovery. Look for a lot more on this topic in next year's AskTOM sessions. From there, we moved on to some of the things we've done with other pieces of the Oracle puzzle. We talked again about Database Security Assessment Tool, and we announced this version 2.03 that I talked about earlier. We talked about a new feature that we introduced in 18C called schema-only accounts that allows you to create database users that have no password, so no one can log in as a schema-only account. Instead, you're able to use these accounts to store database objects and be accessed by other authenticated accounts. And how in 19C, we've taken this 18C new feature, and this is now how we provision our default accounts. So not only are there no default passwords for the 19C accounts, there are no passwords at all. Only SYS will have a password in 19C. One of the things that we talked about at OpenWorld this year was unified audit. Now this was a feature we introduced back in 12.1, but it's continued to grow in both capability and popularity as we've gone through the 12.1, 12.2, 18C, and now the 19C world. And we talked a little bit at OpenWorld about some of the things you can do with unified audit, because a lot of people don't understand just how flexible this new feature is. One of the things that we talked about that's really interesting to most people is the ability to do conditional auditing, to only audit under certain conditions or when certain conditions aren't met. A classic example of this is I don't want to audit everything that's coming from the application, but I want to audit anything that's not coming from the application. We talked about the capability to do exception-based auditing. I want to audit everything that happens on this schema except if it's done by the schema owner. We talked about auditing based on role membership. We also covered some things like auditing based upon which component is doing the access. If it's being done by RAS or by Database Vault, we can have different audit policies based on the actual component. And we talked about the value of the predefined policies that we ship, and we tied these predefined policies in a little bit to the autonomous database, which takes advantage of these predefined policies. So a lot on unified audit, and we could have spent much more time on this. We talked about Oracle Audit Vault and Database Firewall and how it's not just for Oracle databases, working with SQL Server, DB2, MySQL, Sybase databases, but not just working with databases, because databases run on servers and those servers have their own audit trails, and so Audit Vault and Database Firewall has the capability to go out and pick up information from those servers. And we talked about the importance of not just auditing, but of monitoring the information as it comes in over the network and of blocking in certain cases. We're very happy to talk about some of the new things that we're bringing out in Oracle 19c, and one of those new features is Database Vault Operations Control. And we talked about how Operation Control makes it easier to deploy either public or private cloud, ensuring that operations that occur within pluggable databases are isolated from the container and giving you better control over what's going on inside of your pluggable databases. We talked about enhancements to encryption, and today encryption really is mainstream. It's one of the most common controls people are deploying, and how we've made the ability to encrypt your databases easier over time with online table space conversion, offline table space conversion, and some of the capabilities that we added in 18c around per PDB wallet for cloud and Exadata databases. We talked about something that's very important if you're going to encrypt, and that's key management, and we discussed the capabilities in Oracle Key Vault. And we talked about some of the things that we've done over the last 18 months or so to make Key Vault more usable, improve its availability, and improve its manageability. But one of the big announcements of OpenWorld this year was some of the things that we're planning on doing in the next release of Key Vault, where we're introducing multi-master cluster functionality that allow you to have a mesh of key vaults working together to serve your key needs. And we discussed how the different nodes will work and how high availability within a node can be used. And we also talked about the capability to set up read-only replicas, so you can really extend your OKV cluster out to just about any data center type architecture. We showed you some examples of this and how the new screens are going to look, and we got a lot of positive feedback on what we're doing with Key Vault. Cannot wait to see this get out the door and have this capability to have truly globally replicated, globally available Key Vault just about anywhere. We talked about some of the other things we're doing with Key Vault, improved REST interfaces, a client SDK, but the big thing, the star of the show, was the multi-master capabilities. We talked about Database Vault Simulation Mode, which was a 12.2 new feature that was enhanced in 18c, and we talked about how having simulation mode has made it so much easier to develop Database Vault policies and to test those policies before making them enabling, lowering your risk in using Database Vault to control access to your data. We talked about a feature of Database Vault that most people don't start with. Most people tend to start with simple separation of duties and realms, but that everyone should take a look at, and that is the use of Database Vault command rules to control who can do what to which objects and under which conditions, and how you can use command rules and sets of rules within those to control things at a very fine-grained level. We talked about centrally managed users, which we introduced last year at OpenWorld with the 18c launch, and we've now got a year of experience deploying centrally managed users, and we're really seeing a lot of traction with this new feature. So the ability to link your databases directly into Active Directory has been very, very popular. I talked at the start a little bit about regulation, and probably the granddaddy of regulations that most people are worrying about right now is the European Union's General Data Protection Regulation. So we discussed GDPR and what GDPR means, and we talked about how GDPR maps to database security, and we were very happy to be joined on stage by NOS Media from Portugal, and they talked a little bit about how they use the maximum security architecture that we discussed a little bit earlier to meet their GDPR requirements to protect their customers' data. We wrapped up talking about the fact that development never ceases on the Oracle database. We are constantly trying to improve every new version. Most of the time, bundle patches bring new functionality, new capabilities, little tweaks that help make database security easier to manage, that help make it easier to prevent bad things from happening, detect when they're happening, or assess your system. And I want to finish this up before we turn it over to Q&A with the way my Senior Vice President, Vipin Samar, ended his keynote on database security. And that is, data is an asset. It has value. But don't let your asset become a liability. Secure your data, secure your business. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and open it up for questions and answers now. That's the end of the technical presentation. Remember, you can ask questions via chat or by unmuting your line. Let's start with the questions that came in via chat. For those who have no questions, thanks for joining, and I look forward to seeing you again next month for office hours. Let's see, what do we have? Judith asks in chat, if possible, I think it would be nice to have a future AskTOM Office Hours session dedicated to presenting the unified auditing in some more detail, not strictly limited to the additions of the last versions, but as a feature in general. That's a great idea, Judith. I will try and slot that in either in January or February. Sound good? We're not doing an AskTOM session in December, but we'll try and do one either January or February on unified auditing. Great question.
From Dan, where can the slides be found? Dan, I don't usually send out the slides, but if you want any of these, I am happy to give them to you. If you want the slides for OpenWorld, then what you would do is, let me just grab a browser tab here. You would go out to just look for Oracle OpenWorld 2018 Content Catalog. And when you get to the Content Catalog, say you want to view all sessions and put in a session. Suppose that I wanted to see that great presentation on GDPR. So I'd go look for GDPR, and here is data security in the GDPR era, and here I can download the presentation for it. And there's the entire deck ready to download. So hopefully that answered that question. Jim, you sent a note saying RHEL 5 does not support 1.8. Whew. RHEL 5 is pretty long in the tooth.
Yeah, we're slow.
Let's talk about that one offline. That is probably going to mean you can't go to Audit Vault Bundle Patch 9. I don't think we have had this come up anywhere yet. Let me do some digging and see what I can do for you.
Yeah, I think we're going.
And this is.
I think we're going to deploy it on one and then have it deal with two databases at the same time across versions.
You can do that. You can deploy the agent on another server and have it work remotely. I always prefer to have the agent on the same server as the database, but you can work it remotely.
Yeah, this is going to give me a deployment headache.
Okay, that's good feedback. I've got a meeting with the development manager for that piece of it here right after this, so I'll see what I can find out for you. Let's see. Rich asks, is Bundle Patch 9 available for engineered systems, especially ODA X7? Bundle Patch 9 is only for Audit Vault and Database Firewall, so it's not for the Exadata or for the ODA, you apply it to the Audit Vault server. If you're asking, can you install the Audit Vault server on an Exadata or on an ODA? No, that really goes kind of on its own machine somewhere else. Really, the only exception to that is in the cloud, we allow you to install Audit Vault into OCI where it runs in a VM, and that could be on an Exadata. Okay. Oh, I see Rich was asking that for percent. Thanks. Thank you. Thank you, Rich. Let's see, did I catch up? Are there any other questions that I missed? I'm just scrolling back to what I can see in chat now. All right. I know we're towards the top of the hour here again, but because I had so many network issues, and I know that cost you some time, I'll stick on for a little bit longer. If you've got questions, please feel free. They don't have to be on OpenWorld. Anything to do with database security, I'll do my best to answer.
Well, is the latest Audit Vault support the unified auditing?
It does. It does.
Well,
we added support for all.
To be able to see the policies and all that.
We still do not show unified audit policies in the current release of Audit Vault. That won't come until 19.1 next year.
Okay.